Hi, and welcome to episode 141. And today I'm joined by Andrew McVeigh, who's the managing partner of Remara. And over the last 18 months, Remara has more than doubled in assets under management and nearly tripled their workforce. So Andrew has been right in the middle of what it takes to scale a team really quickly. We talk about the push and pull of hiring too late versus hiring ahead of the workload and why sometimes just thinking, oh, we can just make do for a few more months can really quietly create pressure and risks as you grow. Andrew also shares how they're building a culture that still feels connected in a fast-paced, high responsibility environment, including mentoring, role shadowing, and helping leaders create clear decision frameworks. And perhaps my favourite part is how Andrew describes how having a simple purpose statement has really helped to align the whole organisation. So if you're growing fast, building leaders, or you're trying to protect your culture when things move at pace, then this episode is just for you. Welcome, Andrew.
Welcome, Karen. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. It's great to have you on today. And I wanted to start off talking a little bit about Remara, which has grown quite rapidly over the past 18 months. So could you tell us a bit more about that and what has the experience been like from a people and culture perspective?
Yeah, certainly. So the business has grown quite dramatically. So we've pretty much more than doubled in terms of assets under management over the
Mhm.
last 18 months. That's presented some fairly unique challenges. With that, we've had almost a three times increase in our total workforce. So what we had was essentially a platform that was scaling very, very quickly and has continued to scale very quickly. What it's meant is we've needed to find and identify roles that we've probably brought on some roles a little bit early, some roles a little bit late compared to where we should have brought them on. I think one of the biggest learnings and one of the biggest challenges has been is as we've really built the platform, particularly in the first 6 to 9 months of the last journey we've been on, we've probably brought people on later than what we should have. So we probably thought, well, we'll hire a part-time person because the role isn't at full scale yet, or we'll just wait another 2 or 3 months until we kind of build a little bit more capacity and then bring somebody on. I think what we've learned and what I've taken from that early period is you can't really do that and expect that person to then succeed in a role if you bring them in, particularly something on a part-time role or a structure like that where effectively you're hiring for what you've got now, but you're going through hyperscale. So what you've got in 6 months' time is not representative of what you hired the person to do. And the workload has changed, the complexity has changed, or even the organisation has changed in terms of pivoted in terms of focus or a certain area. So I think one of the challenges for us has been ensuring we stay ahead of the skill set that we need, ensuring we stay ahead of the planning of workload, skill set, matching that together. And that's something that we've probably worked a lot on over the last 6 to 9 months of the 18-month journey, which is now starting to really come to fruition. We're starting to do exactly that, hire people probably slightly in advance of the full role being there, or a full-time role being there. Looking to upscale in terms of a few more senior people throughout the organisation, and really starting to look to try and embed culture, systems, process, and also a standard level of operating throughout the organisation. So there's definitely been some challenges, and it's been a pretty substantial evolution for us over that 18-month journey. And I think as we start to look back on it now, there's some really, really strong learnings, as I said, in and around the people component in terms of getting the right mix early, not trying to hire a part-time role when it could be or should be probably a full-time role, and also not waiting too long to hire somebody, thinking or being concerned that it might not be 100% full-time role now, even though that in 2 or 3 months' time it will be. Probably being a little bit cheap on headcount and human capital from that perspective.
Yeah, it's always hard, right? Because people want to get the revenue in first, but it's hard
It
to
is,
get the
yeah.
revenue in first if you don't have the people
It
delivering. So,
is.
were there certain sort of like tools or checklists or triggers that you discovered that actually that's the bit that we hire before the need?
Oh, look, that's a really good question. I think certain parts of our business, when we were smaller, we could do a little bit more all of ourselves. So everyone could take a little bit more of their role and do a little bit more, and that could probably assist us to get to where we needed on say a fund structure or an administrative component, or even running a one of our construction lending books. And I think as we've scaled through that platform, we've then now started to realize you don't have the ability to just everybody chip in and get it done, because the roles become much more specialized, and
Mm.
it becomes a deeper level of knowledge that you ultimately need. So we're at a position now where we've kind of worked our way through that transition, and you're pretty much at the back end of it now. It's been, we've ran the platform pretty hard as a result of that. And we've kind of had, some people enjoy that, some people probably not as much enjoy that program. But I think what we've really learned now is we've got to that size and scale where the workload justifies dedicated people with dedicated skills and experiences. And because of what we do holistically as a group, we've got very niche skills, and starting to get the right professionals in the right roles is really, really critical. Give them enough room to kind of build their own function, which is kind of, the next challenge for us, is having multiple functions like that all built at the same time, and trying
Mm.
to ensure that they all talk to each other, and they all are consistent in terms of their approach, and things don't fall through the cracks. So there's teething problems, as there always is, but I think that's one of the next challenges that we're kind of starting to face, is how we continue that scalability of the platform, where you have more segregated teams, and ensuring those teams are now talking to each other, and this level and standard that's been set in the organization is maintained across each of those individual teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And the world that you work in investment is known for being
Hmm.
pretty fast paced, pretty high
Hmm.
pressure.
Yep.
You talked about culture before. So, yeah, how do you intentionally create that culture where people still feel supported and connected, even when they're in those specializations and they're in those teams? What have you
Yeah.
started to do or think about in that respect?
Well, I think finding the right senior leaders within the organization is critical. And yeah, the approach that we take, it's kind of bifurcated on level of experience, because I have found, particularly now as you bring younger people into the organization, they've generally had very different experiences. So there's been more work from home. They've gone through a COVID period where there probably hasn't been as much training and development, certainly not as much as what was around when I was first starting my career. So I think what we focused on is, trying to be able to explain, to more junior members of staff who are contributing, how they're contributing to the business, how they're contributing to the growth and to the overall, mission statement of the business. So, like, what are we trying to achieve, and how are they contributing to that achievement? I find that connection for younger guys, kind of 35 and under, is pretty critical, and something that they're looking for. As you start to get more, senior operators who have been in and around the workforce for 15 years plus, it's a slightly different conversation. It's more around giving them something to run where they can make it theirs, and providing the guardrails and foundation and support network around that from a resourcing perspective is critical. But making sure that they can still make it their own, again, because they want to be able to learn from, or they want to be able to implement something based on what they've learned through their journey. They've seen a lot, they've gone through a lot of different experiences, and generally everybody has a excuse me, generally everybody's got a view as to how they want to manage people, manage process, manage their specific area, giving them enough room to be able to do that, but still maintain an overarching culture of kind of high performance is pretty critical. How we do that is really kind of segmenting the workforce out and the team out into different levels of experience and adapting some of our styles to and level of interaction across each of those different age groups, because it's not a one size fits all. It can't be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that you've already recognised that, because that could take some businesses years and years and years to work that out. They just get frustrated and say, why
Yes.
is this 25-year-old always talking to me about feedback and development? Why can't I just get on with it? So, so it's good you've already joined those dots and know the next step.
I can see the dots. I might not have joined all the dots, but I can at least see them.
They're there.
They're correct.
And one of the things that I saw is, as a brand, you talk about a more rewarding return. So, that philosophy, how does that translate internally? So how do you make working for you more rewarding as well as for your investors?
Well, I think it comes down to the ability to be able to explain why we do what we do, and have something that people can believe in and feel comfortable that they align with. So internally, when we start talking about the investment side of our business, we don't use the more rewarding return. What we actually talk about internally is we're managing people's life savings. So we don't know whether that's $10,000, $100,000, $1 million. We don't know how long it took that person to earn that, so we're going to treat that with the utmost respect. When you start to talk and there is internal discussion around the responsibility that comes from that, regardless of their position and their within the team or their skill level, they start to take that seriously, right? So it's a bit of a common cause as to what we're working for and why we're there and what we're doing, and it also creates or roots the organization into a key customer service mantra that we've got in terms of looking after the investor and ensuring that they get good, strong service, on the basis of tying back to, a relatable topic or a relatable outcome or a relatable achievement where, again, we're not just dealing with family offices or institutional investors where people go, I can't relate to someone who can invest 25 billion bucks. It's 10 grand for retail. It's our high net worth. It's family office. It's institutional. It's everybody. And that's been, the foundation of the investment platform. We've wanted to be able to ensure institutional investors and retail investors can access the same opportunities. Consistent return profile, consistent structure, consistent covenants, consistent legal documents and benefits kind of underpin everything that we do. And that's a very strong mantra internally within our organization that, we are the work that we are doing, it has an impact on every one of our customers day in, day out. And that's the driving forces to what we do. So starting to talk about that and being very open about that being our mission, and not, to be honest, not putting a whole bunch of buzzwords around it, putting it in really clear, common language that everybody understands. I think that has done a pretty strong job in terms of aligning everybody in terms of that outcome, and that has driven a lot in terms of people going above and beyond. Like some of our sales guys or investor relations guys going above and beyond. Definitely the registry guys at certain points have done that, and you start to see it in terms of Trustpilot reviews. You start to see it in terms of roughly 35% of new investors are referrals, which from an advocacy perspective is huge for an investment firm. So from our perspective, those are the tangible outcomes that we're starting to see from just building a really simple mantra that everybody can kind of understand and adopt, and is rooted in what we want to deliver, which is good, strong investor service or customer service.
Yeah, I love that. I worked many years ago for an electricity company, and if you asked any of the staff, there was over 3,000 staff, if you asked them what's the purpose of the organisation, everybody said to keep the lights on. But of course, they brought in, consultants that came up with this 3-paragraph purpose statement. And I've always had that in my mind, because at the end of the day, there's always something very small that people can connect to. And I love that idea that, we're holding on to people's life savings, and that just gives that inferred care and support and trust, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's the ability to be able to disseminate all of that mumbo jumbo into 2 or 3 easy to understand words that, no matter your education level, no matter your experience level, no matter your level within the organization, it means pretty much the same to everybody. I think that's the key, to be able to come up with the right kind of mission, and keep the lights on is a really good one, because that is your job. Right? And
that was the job. If you do nothing else, as an electricity company, you've just got to keep the lights on.
Correct. And it's pretty simple, but it's pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned consistency as well before, and I think that consistency, I talk about this a lot with culture, is that it really is the one underpinning component. And so, of course, part of that is, how do we get leaders to be consistent? And I know that you recently launched a mentoring program where you paired staff with leadership team members. So can you talk to us about that? What inspired that, and what results have you seen so far?
So that's something that I've done at prior organizations. So when I was at Brookfield Asset Management, we had a program very, very similar to that. It worked really, really well. It's pretty critical to get the right manager and the right employee. And the right manager is someone who has probably a slant towards helping people understand, and they've got to be really accepting of that role, because it's a pretty important role. But what works well from it is, if you can find the right managers who have the right approach to that, and have the ability to be able to, again, take probably more complicated concepts and disseminate them into a few key frameworks or thought processes, it helps team members develop their thinking. And everybody approaches things differently, but what I have found through my journey and doing this now at multiple organizations is, assisting people with a thought framework process helps, because it starts to root them into a position of thinking through how they got to their position. What did they consider? What haven't they considered? Over time, because it takes time in terms of doing that, but over time, they've got the ability then to be able to sit back and go, well, actually, I haven't considered this, I haven't considered this, and they naturally will start to implement that within their decision framework process. So I like it on the basis that it creates not groupthink. It certainly doesn't create groupthink, but it means that when people have an opinion, it's well thought through, and they're putting their skew as to everything that they've seen up until that point, until they say whatever they say. So their life experiences, their school experiences, their family experiences, their prior work experiences, what they did over the last 2-3 weeks, everything they've learned to this point, they're putting that skew on it. But they've gone through a fairly consistent process to think through in a consistent way, and everybody else within the room has started to do that. That's how I think you get ultimately better decisions, not because everybody's going through this or everybody has the same thought. It's everybody goes through a similar process, and all that's adapting is their life experiences to be able to come up, and that's how I think, or I've seen work really well in the past. Processes where you get some really good outcomes and really good ideas, and people get challenged through that process. But I think having a fairly consistent framework means that it starts to break down the barriers of potential conflict and things like that, and people feel a lot more comfortable in terms of contributing, because they actually have gone through a framework. And then if you ask them to explain it, they can go through in detail about how they got there and what they considered. And I think as you start to have groups of people who have those conversations, it starts to become a very cohesive team and a very cohesive environment, because people see that others within that group have considered things that they haven't considered because they haven't had that experience. And it starts to break down well, I'm right because I've done this, into, okay, I hadn't considered that. That's interesting. and you add that to your framework, and you kind of get, I think you get to better outcomes in a manner that has less potential for conflict.
Mm. Yeah, it's really more of a mindset
Yeah,
development, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah, just
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
get that consistency in terms of what our mindset is. And, and I know that leadership development is quite a key focus for you. So, as a leader yourself, how do you help others to manage their own challenges in terms of growth, communication, decision making? Do you have a way that you tend to do that best?
To be honest, there's a few different ways. One way I do like is the ability to kind of step back and let them make their own mistakes and their own failings in a somewhat controlled environment. Um, because I think for you to learn, like the way I've learned through my career has been a lot of trial and error, a lot of mistakes. And I think the ability to be able to go through that and not lose confidence, to be able to have a persistent and resilient approach to things, I think is one of the key things that I probably don't see as much of in younger staff members as what I used to, particularly pre-COVID. I think, that's probably one of and the more I talk to people outside of our organization, the more I talk to recruiters, headhunters, that is just a consistent theme everywhere. And the level of perseverance and resilience for more junior staff members is probably not something it's something that's degraded, particularly since COVID. So, a lot of what I try to do is allow them to make mistakes, give them a slightly safer environment to be able to do that, knowing that if something is about to really break, like, where it actually causes issues for the organization, I kind of step in and help at that point. But outside of that, like, give them the ability to learn. What you'll find out of that process, and what I've found out of that process, is it's hugely informative in terms of the person's thought process, their resilience, their perseverance. They start to figure out where they kind of fit in. And what I mean by that is, not everybody wants to be a senior leader. Some people want to be a senior leader until they figure out what it takes to be a senior leader.
Very true.
And the best way to do it is to experience some of that stuff and figure out whether you like it or you don't. And I think, to be honest, it's then having just the direct conversation of, you need to be able to do this. You need to be able to have these conversations. You need to be able to, deal with ambiguity. You're not always going to know the answer, and you're going to have 5 people looking up to you wanting the answer. So if you're uncomfortable with that, then you've either got to figure out whether you can change, and you can get comfortable, or you probably need to realign, whether you actually want to be a senior leader or a leader. And I think, it's probably more conversations around, if you're not happy doing what you're doing, even if you are failing or facing challenges, if you're not happy, it's probably a pretty good indication that you're doing something you don't want to be doing.
Yeah, that's true. I think that people naturally assume that they want to keep going up the ladder and manage people, and some people just shouldn't, because it's not their strength, that drains their energy completely.
Yeah.
And so trying to find those opportunities where people can trial it without being one can be difficult. But I understand that you do role shadowing and some other things in
We
the
do, we do,
organization. Yeah.
we do. It's something new that we started to bring in. So again, it's something that I used a lot at Brookfield. We'd have a process where a junior member of the finance team would shadow me as I was kind of CFO in my role, for a day, kind of attend all the meetings, all the discussions, all the phone calls, and kind of see the level of diversity of stuff that I had to deal with at that point in time. It's really good in terms of providing people, oversight, and I think, one of the challenges two-way is, it's easy for me to sit there and say, how has someone not considered this? But I have a raft of information that other people are not don't have access to, and don't have the ability to or I suppose don't have access to, so don't have knowledge of. And vice versa. It's easy for a team member who doesn't have access to all the stuff I do going, well, why would you make that decision? So it provides probably a little bit more opportunity for people to get different views, and particularly for junior staff members to be able to see, okay, if you do want to progress and you do want to become a leader, and particularly more senior leaders, you've got to be able to go from multiple topics in a day, not over the course of a week, not from one day to the next, like intraday from 1 hour to the next hour. And you've got to have multiple conversations, and you've got to make multiple decisions. Again, it just creates a bit of a realistic view of what it's actually like. And again, you can't always take the horse to water and force it to drink. Some people take it, see it, and love it. Other people kind of shy back and go, I'm not sure I actually want that.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's actually a good thing, because they kind of have more of a knowledge of what they want and what they want to achieve themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned that you've grown a lot in 18 months, not a long period. So the pressure builds as well, as I'm sure it has with you.
Yeah.
So how do you, look after your own well-being, but also that of your team and their engagement when things are going that quickly?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, for myself, I try to find periods of my day, which generally are the very first periods of the day, like 5 a.m. up, going for a walk, no phone, do not check emails until I kind of get into the office. Trying to really have the start of the day where I'm not rushed. So focused on, what I need to think about it, whatever that point in time is. Nice quiet walk, period of time on my own, and then not looking at my phone, not looking at emails until I'm in the office. Because you start doing that, and I'll be honest, I didn't always used to do that. I used to be the almost exact opposite of that. As soon as I was waking up, I was on my phone checking who sent me emails, what happened, what text I got, what the news was, what the markets did. And that wasn't a great scenario. And I think, since implementing that, and I'll be honest, that's only something I've implemented in the last kind of 9 months. It's certainly helped to, readjust my focus and just calm my process. Like, I'm naturally a pretty intensive person anyway. So it's just kind of helped take a little bit of the edge off that intensity to start with, because it's given me the time to kind of sit back and get my thoughts right to start the day, and then kind of hit the day hard. In terms of team members, it's probably just recognizing, we don't have a culture of people working back really late at night. Like, we're not an investment bank, so I might leave at 7 and the office is empty, which is good. It's we don't have a big culture of you have to work on the weekends. So the work-life balance, in my opinion, is compared to, again, what I've experienced in my life and my career, is acceptable. But I think that's kind of the key attribute around it, is having the conversation with team leaders, making sure that their teams are comfortable with what they're doing, and it's trying to understand the individual personalities of the people. Some people will be, will have high octane, will want to push, want to drive, want to work extra hours, have no problem about it, be very focused on their career. Others will have roles that are key roles, but they're more roles that are 9 to 5 based. They play key positions. They make sure stuff keeps going in the background, and that's just as important as someone who's working longer hours, or generating origination deals or something like that, because you can't have a business of just one type of person and one type of skill set. So I think having a focus on each individual person's personality, and try to be able to pick when someone might be under the pump a bit too much, or like, you can generally see if someone's a little stressed. And it's the benefit that I've got is I don't work with everybody directly, but if you walk around and you kind of just take a little bit of notice, you can kind of see people that either a little bit unhappy or a little bit under pressure, or they're outside of their comfort zone a little bit too much.
Yeah, and that's always been one of the criticisms of hybrid working or working remotely, is that you lose that
Yeah.
ability to do that, right? Like, and
Yep.
especially if you've got people that are earlier on in their careers and are less likely to be open about how they're
Yeah.
feeling at the time.
Yeah.
So
Like
yeah,
we don't have a we don't have a work from home policy. Like our policy is office based.
yeah,
If you need time and you've got stuff at home, or you need things outside of work that you need to deal with during the week, that's fine. You
yeah,
can always work from home. But for that purpose, we have an office based process.
yeah,
Our policy is office based because we are moving at a fast pace.
yeah.
But I also want people to feel connected.
Mm,
And I want I want to be able to make sure that if people have questions, or they need that support around them, that they've got that support.
yeah,
And I'll be honest, like we've missed out on hiring people because we have that policy. I'm not
yeah,
changing that policy.
yeah. And I think that's the thing, as long as you're clear what works for you and your
Yeah.
culture, because what
Yep.
works for one business definitely does not work for another.
No, that's correct. Yeah.
So,
And
um,
even individually within team members, like the process that we have, works for some, doesn't work for everybody. There is no one size fits all.
no,
So
absolutely.
all the best thing you can do is just try to adapt as much as you possibly can, and you'll never get 100% people 100% happy 100% of the time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, my last question is,
Hmm.
looking back on your journey with Remara so far,
Hmm.
what's the one thing that you've learned about building or scaling a team or managing people that has really surprised you?
Well, that's a good question.
I know it's hard to come up with just one.
No, it's a good question, and I think, to be honest, it's yeah, it's creating a really simple purpose. Um, I was surprised about that.
Mm,
Um, just in the simplicity of it.
yeah.
Doesn't mean it's easy coming up with that purpose.
Mm,
And to be honest, that probably took the most amount of time.
yes.
Um, but I was kind of surprised at the relative simplicity of it, and the level of acceptance throughout
Mm,
the team of it. Um, and it works universally now, that if we have an investor event and we talk about that, it resonates with investors, it
yeah.
resonates with staff, it resonates with stakeholders. It like that, and it's kind of like a bit of a marketing push, or marketing ploy from that perspective. But the simplicity of having something that is um, the reason why, and is so easy to understand and easy to accept, and kind of cuts through all of the noise of all of the different things you need to do and all the
Mm,
different stakeholders you have and whatnot. Um, I was surprised about how accepting that was. Like
mm,
I probably didn't appreciate that when we first kind of came up with it and started to implement it, and I've been surprised about the level of cut through. Doesn't mean it always works on every single person
yeah.
all the time, but it certainly it certainly resonates with a big component part of our workforce,
Mm,
and has done a pretty good job, or a very good job actually,
mm,
in aligning everybody
mm.
to a common goal.
Yeah, I think that's great. And Simon Sinek, I'm sure you've read some of his work through doing the purpose statement. He says that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And whether that's
Yeah,
an employee or it's a
yeah,
client, that why, that purpose is so important. So I love that. And you're quite right. It takes a long time to get there. People don't realize how difficult it is actually coming up with that purpose, because you need something that's
yeah.
simple, that's short, and everyone
Yes,
can remember it,
yes.
but it's got to be meaningful and have that emotional connection. So,
And what's actually like a funny story about that is it just came out one day.
mm,
Like it was, I think I was having a conversation with someone, and it just was, well, we're doing this to manage people's life savings.
yeah.
And it was like, oh, actually, you know what? That's pretty good.
The light bulb went
So
off.
I'll admit I kind of stumbled into that.
But that's how it happens though, because it is always in people's heads and it's
Yeah,
trying to get it
yeah,
out that can be
yeah,
difficult. So
correct.
look, thank you for joining me. I really enjoyed the conversation today. If people would like to get in touch with you or learn more about Remara, what's the best way to do that?
So I do have a LinkedIn page, so you can kind of DM me through that,
Hmm.
and I'll be able to respond.
Hmm.
Or I think we've got some kind of contact emails on our website and things like that that you could probably go out to. Outside of LinkedIn, I'm not on any other social
Yeah,
media. So
yeah,
well, I think we've got company profiles, but I don't run them.
yeah.
So
No,
yeah, LinkedIn DM is probably the best way to contact
best
me.
way. Yeah,
Yeah,
excellent. And we'll put links to your LinkedIn page and also the company website into
perfect.
the show notes. So thanks for joining me today. And to those that are listening, if you've received value from this episode, I'd love it if you can leave a rating or a review over Apple Podcasts or Spotify so someone else can also find the episodes to help with their business. Episodes are released on Mondays, so click subscribe and you'll be notified of when that's available. And of course, if you have any feedback, questions, or ideas for future episodes, head on over to amplifyhr.com.au or connect with me on LinkedIn and we can start a conversation. Thank you so much, Andrew. It's been great to have you today.
No, thanks, Karen. It's been great. Cheers.